everybody. I am online now after not being online and struggling to get online. It's always something. Today it was the computer. I don't know why the laptop decided not to work. It just did. So it left me kind of hanging. So I'm going to just power through, trudge on, see what we got. Let's get my background ambience going here. Let's see. I always have something on the modular. Something. Okay, that's a surprise. That's a little off. Okay, well, I must have hit a key. Wonder where that's coming from. Something went a half step off. The joys of modular. Okay, so never a dull moment. Let me pull that back a little bit. And what I was playing for you over the intro was a little bit of a track I'm working on for a collaboration with a Nigerian artist I met online through some friends of mine who had found him. And that's the wonderful thing about the internet and the world and music is we could have a conversation right away and not ever having met each other, and so I love it. Now let's get into what we're gonna do. Let me just give you a quick tour of that. That was a quick track. Let me shut this off here. I don't usually do much guitar, but this kind of guitar is easy for me to do, especially if you copy and paste, as I am wont to do. The guitar here is in green. You can see what we did here. So that's all one chunk. And then and I think that was originally played that way. I think I just chopped a line there. And that's got a little delay on it. Where is that? I think it's this one. Yep, warm echo. I didn't even change the preset. I think it's pretty much just as it was loaded. So let me show you a few other things here. First, let me get out of that. This being a demo, I kept it really simple. Hip hop kit. I think this is the default re-drum kit. Yeah, it wasn't very original. Bass guitar from Subtractor. You know, there's some patches that you just can't get away from, and that bass guitar Subtractor patch is one of them. It just works so well most of the time for that dark, big, fat bass that it's where I start. And maybe I'll adjust it. I don't know that I did in this case. I think this is pretty much straight up the way that the preset was used. What is natural blend? Oh, the amazing Fender Rhodes from Chris Griffin. Still the best Rhodes out there that I've found. And I know a lot of other people tend to agree. So glad he did that. So I've been trying to add a part. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Go to the timeline. There we go. Sometimes our zoom shift Z should be zoom to selection. It should do that back and forth, but sometimes you get off and it won't. You have to make another selection and then do it, and then it'll work. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, I'm trying a little bit of a trick here with the strings. I'm trying two different ways. Let's see what we got. Yep, versus this way here. hang on. I adjusted the notes, so let's put these notes in there and play this one again. Sorry, this is the second one. Something's not right there. Oh, because I pasted in. Let's see, what was I doing? I did it where okay, so let me show you what I'm doing because I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm taking a string line and I'm using a trick where instead of using the pitch bend, it would actually work pretty well if I used the built-in pitch bend on the NNXT for this example. But in the next example I'm going to show you in my Ren and Stimpy Happy Go Lively cover, I will do a full octave bend, and that never works well with pitch bend because it just, you end up double time with the thing when it's sped all the way up, or half time if you bend it from the top down. And those are your two options unless you use Neptune, or Auto-Tune could do this if it's got pitch bend, and or any other tuner, Waves Tune, Melodyne, they could all do the same trick. Surprisingly, Neptune sounds pretty believable, but what I've added was the format control. Let's see if I can play you the difference with and without it. I need to go back to the first version though. I need to find my, here we go. This one. And that's the one that sounds like, I gotta solo both of these. Sounds like there's, so that there's still a pitch in there that shouldn't be in there. If I turn the format on and I adjust it, I automated it as well, it should sound better. Versus, you can hear it's somehow it's affecting the top octave. It sounds like the top note stays there and the other two below it, the 2 octaves, it's 3 octaves stacked. And actually, you know what? This thing really needs some reverb or delay or something on it. Let me just put something on very quickly that will get us through, because it needs to have something on there to get that effect. That'll work. So in the second example, I didn't put the format. I always mispronounce that word. I always want to say format. Let's see if this one works. I think I needed to... Okay, I forgot to put something in airplane mode. Sorry about that. I'm guessing that's audible because I can hear it. So let me do that. See if it even matters. I've only got like 100 things that need to be turned into airplane mode. It's always something. Let's see if that works now. Okay, so let's see if I got the pitch right. So we're having a format error there. Let's mute that one temporarily. See if I can clean that up. So I just need to shift it all to where it starts. Here, let's unmute it. Oh, that's not mute. All right, so what's going on right now? I'm going back and forth between programs, between specifically Luna and Reason, and one of them works one way with M directly muting, the other needs to be Command M, and Command M and Reason closes the window. See if this works. Okay, sounds like my timing is off with regards to where they're shifting. It's like that needs to be just a little bit later. I don't know why. Let's see if that works. Okay, that works. Let's hear it in context, though, because this is not even a part that I'm sure is going to work yet. That's what I'm still trying to figure out. Let's hear it from the chorus. Chorus. It may just be too loud for this to work. Slap those. Okay, that works. Okay, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but it's an idea. A lot of times this stuff has to be saved and returned to later. I was trying to do it when I first started the track with these Motown section strings down here, and I wasn't getting what I liked. Then I went through and loaded up my Happy Go Lively cover and remembered this technique using the tuner, Neptune, instead of using the pitch bend. I could probably play that for you real quick here, and you can hear how that'll be different. I think I need to bypass Neptune. See, that works for a whole step. But now we're going to go and see where it doesn't work or wouldn't work, and that would be in a bigger octave-like blend. Okay, first of all, I hope I don't get hit for this being a copyrighted tune, even though I'm not playing you the original. But for those who haven't heard it or aren't familiar with it, this is a cover of a fun Laurie Johnson song from 1962 called Happy Go Lively. I don't know anything about the original use. I only knew about it when it got used in Ren and Stimpy in the 90s, I think the 90s, and later in SpongeBob SquarePants. And just always loved this kind of wacky, loungy, very groovy 60s feel. And every once in a while, I'll get a bug up my butt and want to do a reverse engineer. So let me talk about what that means and why I would even do that. For educational purposes, of course. The idea is you take something that you really like, how it hits you, how it affects you, and you dissect it essentially and figure out what makes it tick. Why do I like this one? What is it that's making me like it? And for me, it was always the pizzicato plucked strings and the glockenspiel, which are two sounds I've always loved. And together, they just do wonders on this track. Let me play you a little bit of it. It's a mood change. Such a happy song. Stop it there. You can hear those string bends. Let me talk you through what the process was, because it applies to any track that you're interested in understanding on a deeper level, and you can take it as far as you want. I tried to make this sound as realistic as possible, as opposed to trying to do my own version of it. This was educational, not creative necessarily. This was all for the challenge of, can I do this with factory sounds? So the solo violin, violins, cello, solo cello, pizzicato strings. The bass is a pizzicato bass, the muted trumpet, 2 different kinds, trombones, horns, clarinets, 3 different clarinets and flutes, glockenspiel, and the brush kit is all from the factory sound bank. The acoustic guitar mute this was 10 years ago, and I'll be honest, it's a mystery. I don't know where this guitar came from. It's played. Let me play it for you. This is one of those things that was the last thing I added too, and I could tell something was missing in the track, and finally zoned in, and it's like it's a guitar. It might be electric guitar on the original, but probably not distorted. So it's a very organic sound, and I don't think I played it myself. I don't think I could play all those chords. I might have transposed some of them, but that's the only part I cannot remember where that came from. It could have come from a sample library and then pasted in note for note. You can see they're all very much different from each other too, so it's very, very organic. They're not samples per se. They're not one-shots. I mean, they are one-shots, but they're not without variation. And I'm pretty sure I didn't play, well, I don't know. Okay, here's what I want to play you. Okay, so there's 2 of each, and you can see that they're not, each time they're slightly different from each other. The pairs are. So I don't know. Anyway, that's the only thing I can't remember where it came from. The rest are straight up factory sounds. The glockenspiel is a slightly modified version I made where I thought some of the samples were too loud and too soft and didn't give even response as you played across it. My approach was, well, my goal or goals were to learn how the voicing was used, the 3 and 4 part harmonies on the pizzicata and on the brass and violins when they play the long notes. That's always amazed me. I don't know. I studied theory for like a couple of years in high school and college, and then I didn't go any further, so I don't know the advanced harmonization rules and all that. But I have an ear, and I have patience, which is even more important than having any sort of a musical ear. It's patience and determination, just like I'm gonna figure this out. And there's things you can do to help. If you're figuring out like a 4-part harmony, then it's the way I've always done it, and I've heard almost everybody else say that it's pretty much you start with the top and the bottom, whichever one is easier for you to hear, and then there's only going to be 1 or 2 notes it could possibly be in the middle, and the limits are going to be they're going to probably be thirds apart from each other, or fourths, or half steps, something within that. You know, they're probably not going to be even as wide as a fifth. They might be, but they're probably going to be a narrower interval. So there's only a few note choices in the scale that it can possibly be. So you can lay down the top and the bottom, which are easy to hear, and then fill in those voices. And to be honest, that's where the fun was for me, because those are always the ones that give it the flavor, but they're not the main ingredient. They give it the twist. Kind of like a spice that you don't know that's there, but when it's gone, it's definitely a power of the combination of elements rather than anything on its own. The whole being greater than the sum of the parts thing, for sure. So in this case, I probably started with the drums, being a drummer. Probably too much reverb on that. I've been revisiting the reverb, and I haven't gotten around to the drums. And then probably the bass. orchestra pit and musicals. Doing a lot of that sort of pattern. And interestingly, country music will also take you into that train world. So let's start at the top. If we turn on the glockenspiel, it's playing a lot of the melody. Let me go to the mixer to do some of this. I'm not sure. I've got things subgrouped, which I didn't before. If I just listen to this, we'll get to the main part, main melody. Turn the guitar off. That's the main part of the song right there. If I played you just that much, in fact, if I played you just that much, you'd know the song. Now here you wouldn't know what's going on, because we kind of lose stuff, but lose the essential elements. But that's the core of the song. And then you add in, or start to add in, let's see how I can do this. Okay, that would have been the next thing I would have added. And in the name of realism, I would have actually played that each time rather than copied and pasted the notes, because not only am I trying to reverse engineer the song and basically be able to chart it, but I also wanted to create a realistic version of it in the sequencer here and try to pass it off as real instruments as much as I could. Now, at a certain point, I'm like, okay, these are the factory sounds. I wish I could find better specific sounds. I think I would say the general sounds were there, but there was a few. The muted trumpets were, and one of the clarinets just didn't sound quite right, but I needed to use 3 different samples. So other native instrument contact libraries would probably be better, and even better would be the top-end film scoring libraries, but I don't have those. I could try to build it up with the native instruments, but the goal at the time was to see how far I could go with the factory sound bank, so I did, and this is how far I got. Now the next thing was to figure out this crazy harmony between these parts here. Let's see what the next part is. Okay, this is the 2 violins are playing the same part. Hope to see this. Okay, now we get into the part where things get more complicated. The viola part. Now, I don't know for a fact that it was recorded with viola. That's the whole point of this is I'm not sure. I'm just doing my best to try to get something that sounds like it. I just assumed that there would be violas on the session. There are 2 parts going on here. This would probably be better if this was a violin and a viola. I'm not sure why we just doubled the parts here and why I didn't put the harmonies here. But this is fun one. This is revealing if you hear it by itself, because this is where all the weird notes are. Mostly thirds. But there's some half steps in there and whole steps. You can hear those were played separately. Now, let's put it together with the rest. I said, let's put it together with the rest. The soloing. Love it. that to me that's the sound right there. These harmonies say 60s, loungy, groovy. There's a jazz influence, but it's very commercial sounding as well. Now let's go on to staying on the strings. I probably would have been pretty much happy with that and then ready to go on to the next section rather. This is where I start to get into some fun little effects. Let me turn this off and play you just the essential elements. Now there's a lot of octaves going on there, and I determined by playing that line once and realizing it's not right. Also, let me show you that there's a solo violin and a regular violin. Is it? Okay, that's the bendy one. So oh, I didn't use that solo violin there in green, okay. Because I moved it down to the one with the Neptune on it. So I used a solo violin and a violin section, and then a solo cello and a cello section. Let's see if that makes sense. To try to fill it out, I wanted you to still hear the vibrato of the lead player. Essentially, it's like the lead player and the section player, because I knew that this type of orchestra was probably small. This is not a symphony orchestra. This is a, what would it be called? It would be a soundstage orchestra or TV orchestra. You don't hear that? Oh, I did. Wow. Okay, that's not supposed to be there. That's a mistake. But you don't even hear that in there. So that's pitch bending the sound, and that's why it sounds a little weird, I think. Once you put the section cellos in with the solo cellos, I still hear it. So I'll probably work that out. Okay, so that's that. And then when we come here, we have this line that's going to be... Okay, let's see what we got there. That's the violas and the cellos in the same octave. Okay, now I want to play you that same part where you'll really hear how wacky it sounds. You hear a lot of squeaks, like a real violin actually. Now that's the solo, and that's the only one out of all the parts that does the actual bending. You hear a little bit on the cello, the solo cello, not the stacked cellos. Then, for some reason, and sometimes you don't know in retrospect why, but I added this. And that goes at the da-da-da-da-da. So I felt like that run where you hear the notes in between kind of gave it, I don't know. It really, if you mute it, you don't really miss it. There, it's gone. And really put it in there. I don't think you'll hear it. And in the same case, by the way, I think on the violas I did the same thing. I did the weird harmonies on the violas. Yep. Now, most of that was not me knowing what I was doing. that was all. Once I had the top and the bottom parts there, I just started doing what a typist would call hunt and peck. Not that note, not that note, maybe that note. Let's try it. Let's see what else goes there. Not that note, not that note, maybe that note. Then we try it and then see if it all makes sense. Now the what's going on big picture at this time, I'm doing a lot of this, which is I have the original track timed out to be into the grid here, and I can switch it on at any time. If I only could, that would have been awesome. So, okay, it's the solos again. Still nothing. Maybe. There it is. Why is it not being heard? It's always something. Oh, because I routed it somewhere. That's what happened. Let me show you, because I thought this was pretty cool at the time. I forgot I did it over to the Mighty Morphin Groovy Melon crossfader. And I did it so that I could put it after the Ozone 9. This is the old Ozone. It's bypassed. And this is how I can now check that mix. This is mono, by the way. That's the other big difference is this is mono, my mix is stereo. So when I switch back and forth, you're going to get some weirdness. And I can't switch back and forth. See, this was all set up to work. I just forgot that I did it. I've got everything going. Let me unmute. Let's visit the brass. The brass is fun. Actually, the wood ones were even more fun. Did I not? This is a complicated setup here. Everything's got to be just right. So that's it. That's what the brass does. I think they do some pops. Oh, they'll play the beginning. Muted trumpet, trombone. And then the clarinets, though, they're the stars of the intro here, I think. And I wasn't sure about the flute, but I stuck it in there. It's one of those things, I did it later. I could hear the clarinets for sure. I could hear the muted trumpets for sure. Then on inspection, I found out that the pizzicato violins also. And I didn't notice that they were there at first either. And that's the joy for me of doing stuff like this, is discovering like the things that you didn't even know were there, but they're right in front of your face. They're not hidden. They're right there. You just, when you focus on something else, when you're looking over there, you can miss something that's over here. So it's a great ear training exercise, if nothing else, to try to get your attention to go where you want it to go. And your attention is usually like a monkey. It doesn't want to go where you want it to go. And it's mischievous. It can sneak away from you. So you can be working on one thing and then all of a sudden you're listening to another. You're distracted and you're like, oh wait, I was listening for the clarinets. Now I'm checking out the muted trumpets. They even hit it harder than I did. I love that line. Now what I could do to take it to the next level, where I am hearing that there are differences, is dynamics. I didn't put a lot of extreme dynamics, which would probably need fader rides in some cases to do, like even the pizzicato strings do a lot of roller coastering, you know, up and down and up and down, and you are amazed when you actually start to analyze it, how much level there's going on, variation in level going on, because you don't really think about it until when you play samples and you hear it all at the same volume and you hear it all very much the same, you realize that's not it. That's not what the real instruments do. So even after you get all the notes, then the next level of re-engineering or reverse engineering a track is to put in the imperfections and the things that make it sound real. And let me look track-wise, though. Yeah, I've put everything in the mix. I like listening to it this way, with all the incidentals in, because it just sounds funny. And you can tell somebody had fun with this. Not much going on here. This is all strings until we get some brass going on. Oh, woodwinds first, then the brass. All right, so the goal isn't to fool anybody necessarily. My goal when I started was just to learn, and it turned out so much better than I thought it was going to turn out that I ended up sharing it. But I don't think the purpose of these types of exercises, this is more like doing weight training or something if you're an athlete, or practicing your scales and rudiments if you're a musician. It's not something you perform or present as a creative piece of music, but you can use it to learn, and it can be educational as well. I see I actually did a significant amount, for me, of EQ across a lot of channels here. I would probably love to explore that, but maybe at another time. The point is to, if you're going to, anybody's interested in taking on something like this, I would suggest you block it out on paper, however it makes sense to you. Count the bars so that you know it's this long. You could also use, I didn't on this, you could also use blocks and reason to map out the different sections. This would have been the intro. What am I doing? And then this would be, oh, this is before I had my my system going, because normally I've got these all pre-named into different sections, so that would have been block 2, and I would go in and name them. And then this would be the next section. You could name that block 2A and 2B, or section A1 and section A2, and then this would be the section B, and then we go back and we do the intro. That's not till over here. Hang on. So we would do, this is 3A and 3B, and then we go back to the intro. Back to the A section. Okay, and then at some point it starts to do these little tags. Okay, right there is where it deviates. Instead of doing another run like it does in the first section, it does that second part where okay, that's what it did before, but over here it goes. So I'd call that a tag. And the names that you give it aren't as important as just understanding, you know, what's going on, and then this would be the end. Actually, the end should happen there. That should be shorter. And once you get it mapped out like that, you can do it on paper, you can do it in the sequencer. Then I would start with the basics. One trick I learned years ago when building a track, I don't know if it would apply equally when you're rebuilding a track, when you're reverse engineering and you're trying to recreate something that already exists, but one approach is to use placeholders the first time around the instruments. So let's start with the drums. I would use a pattern, a single pattern repeating. And then for the bass, I'd go and put down roots, not the bass line, but just the root note. And then for the pads or chords, I would just play block chords. And then for the melody, I would either sing if I could, if I was a singer, or I would write it in with MIDI or play it if I could play it. And then you would go back and start working on the drums with the fills and the changes. And what that does is that gives you a structure and parts that are placeholders, but they're filling in the space for you, so that when you're programming the drums, you're hearing the melody, you're hearing the chords, you're hearing the bass, and it's not in isolation. If there was a reason to do so, you might choose instead on a particular track to do things in a different order. Maybe you do the bass first when it came time for the second round, because it was a more key part to the song, integral, or maybe it was the hook in some way. And if you're dealing with something that's sound design wise going to be tricky, and even something like this is tricky, because I think I could now go in and use even better samples and take it to a whole nother level just on the sonics, but the performances are there, the parts are there, the structure is there, that foundation is already laid. The same thing if I was doing an electronic track, I might just use close enough sounds for getting it all structured and getting it all together close enough, and then go back. And it's kind of like using different sandpaper grits, you know, doing a carving or wood carving or stone carving even, where the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get the hammer out and you're going to make the basic shape, or you're going to get the chainsaw out or the chisel, and then you're going to chisel off the parts that you don't need, and then you're going to start to refine them, and you're going to keep coming back around to the whole thing and getting it all a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. I would take that same approach with building my own tracks as well. The other example I played you earlier today with the this one is a perfect example, because this is all I've done on it, but I've sent it off to the guy who's going to put vocals on it. Then when I get the vocals back, I'm going to rethink these parts. Many of them may stay the same, but maybe they'll get an effect or a better patch chosen. For example, as great as the Rhodes is, it's just the first one. It's the first preset, and the same for the drums. They're just the hip-hop kits. The first thing I came to when I was going, and it was good enough. The point wasn't to make a finished song. The point was to get the idea and the structure down and the mood created, because then if I believe in it, I can put that extra work. I have the energy to put that extra work in where it gets really tough. And going back, jumping around, as I love to do, the Happy Go Lively is at that level now. I've gone through it once to get the general parts, another time when I started adding the reverbs and playing with the EQs to get the mix better. And the reverbs, by the way, still need some work. What I really need to do is I need to go in there, and I've just got a Hall algorithm now, and I've got the ambience processor from Ubik A, which, because this was 10 years ago, that was what was there, and the Softtube TSAR. It's all probably fine, but I think I got better reverbs now, especially with the Liquid Sonics Reverberate and even just the ability of the RV7000 to load um, impulse responses into for doing this kind of classical music or real instrument work. One of the final nails in the coffin that can cleverly disguise the fact that it's artificial is a room that sounds like it's the room that would have been used at the time. And that maybe takes some time to go through impulse responses of different spaces, but and then tweak some of them if they don't sound good right off the bat. But it can pay off because that can sell the whole thing. That would be the fine grit sandpaper stage of this one, where I could take it to a whole nother level. But just like with the analogy still holds up when you're talking about that last bit of work is going to be hard to really appreciate between that last sandpaper and the final polish. There's not a lot of change that's going to happen. It's going to be very subtle, but it's going to require just as much work as some of the early stages did. So it gets frustrating, and you're always up against the when do I stop? When is it good enough dilemma? And that said, I think I'm going to wrap it up now because I've got to the end. Even though I started late, I got to the end of my hour, and I've covered everything I wanted to cover, and hopefully inspired somebody to take on a project for their own education and try to see how close they can come to reverse engineering it. And if you do, please let me know and share it on Reason Talk, and we'll talk about your process and compare notes if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you with some more of this because it's just too good not to do so. And I'll see you next time.